All right, so let's talk about the United States today. The United States has been shaped by its history of colonization and its immigration, both politically, economically, and also culturally. All right, so our central question is what values and beliefs have influenced the government of the U.S.? Um, First, let's talk about some contributions of immigrants. We all, unless you are full blooded Native American Cherokee Creek, we all come from immigrants in some form or another. In fact, U.S. society can be called a melting pot because we are so diverse and have people from so many different places. Um, One contribution is the British brought with them the English language, which is the most widely spoken language. Um, Spanish is often spoken in the southeast and also the southwest. Um, if you go out to the southwest, as I said in class, that you can see homes that have the sort of neutral colored stucco on the side, and then they have the red roofing on it. And that's very much Spanish influence architecture. Also, French is spoken in Louisiana, which was once a province held by France. And I spoke about also the Creole accent, the Cajun accent being kind of an offshoot from French pronunciations, and that still exists today. So, what is an immigrant? It's someone who chooses to move to a new country. Now, there are several reasons for this. They could be trying to escape persecution or discrimination or even war. Um, they also could be to escape natural disasters, earthquakes, droughts, and also tsunami type disasters. And also simply to improve economic or educational opportunities for themselves and their families. All right, so the first Native Americans are the very first Americans arrived in this country from Eastern Asia. If you look at Eastern Asia, it is actually Russia. And we don't think of Russia being on an Asian country, but it's actually on the continent of Asia. And to the extreme northeast of Russia is an area called Siberia. Um, and after you leave Siberia, you would be in the Pacific Ocean. Well, the theory is that during an ice age, water levels receded and exposed a land bridge between the coast of Siberia and the coast of what is Alaska today. Um, so at that point, they call that the Bering Strait, and at that point, um, 12 to 35,000 years ago, people migrated from Asia to North America, and that's how North America was populated. Um, Now, the Anasazi, that is Navajo for ancient ones, they developed a complex civilization. They began about 100 AD and reached a height around the 11th or 13th century. But they were experts in irrigation, and they also built cliff dwellings that, with up to 1,000 rooms in the side of kind of mountainous regions, and there's still some of those in existence to this day. And the Europeans arrived in the late 1400s, and they settled on the Atlantic coast. The Spanish settled in Florida and in the Southwest, where there's still Spanish influence seen in architecture to this day. And the settlers did actually clash with, Native Americans over their resources and land. All right, this is around the time slavery in the colonies started. Slavery equaled a cheap source of labor for landowners that settled here to plant crops and to sell those crops. Africans were sent to the colonies and sold as property and forced to work. One wave of immigration not typically thought of when we think of immigrants. In the second half of the 1800s, many Chinese came to the U.S. Some worked in mines, but most famously, they helped build the Transcontinental Railroad. And this stuff right here was more civics, so we really don't need to go over that. Alright, so let's talk about the political process itself. The U.S., as a republic, it decides who will run the government. And we've talked about citizenship before, which is basically a legal member of a country. Democracy comes from a Greek word meaning simply rule of the people. And the U.S. is actually a republic. It's ruled through elected representatives rather than direct democracy, which is everyone having a direct vote on every single matter. We simply elect representatives. The political process, know this term, legal activities used to change public policy. And also know this term, patriotism. It simply means love of your country. This new government was really an experiment. It was a republic that based on democratic principles. Now, the Constitution is still the basis for U.S. law and government. And this other stuff we went over in civics as well. But just know that the Constitution kind of prescribes limits for government power and defines the rights of citizens. Limited versus unlimited government we touched on in the last mission, so I won't touch on it here. All right, and we've talked in the past about the Bill of Rights and constitutional amendment and the amendment process. For our purposes, just know that something that kind of drove immigration, to this country was First Amendment freedoms in the 1800s, early 1900s. Even to this day, people do flock to this country because of our history of a freedom of speech and freedom of religious practice. All right, and that as well is something that we've gone over before. Okay, checks and balances we discussed in detail when we were in civics. The three branches of government share power, and each branch tends to have a check on the other's power. There's executive, legislative, and the judicial branch, and there's that word, our vocabulary word that we're so proud of because it's really a college word that we're able to learn here in the 7th grade, and that's bicameral. We have a Congress that has two sides to it. It has a Senate and a House of Representatives. So for our purposes here, just know that that the legislative branch does indeed have two sides, a Senate and a House. And that's it for this chapter, and we'll pick back up with the United States economy in the next video. Thanks.